They could build around Derek Carr had he been healthy, but the fact that he may not be available for parts or all of the 2025 season is suddenly a huge concern, because I had a 3-round mock draft come out last Monday, Tommy, and I had them taking Kelvin Banks, the offensive lineman, because that's where they need help if Derek Carr is healthy. And then I had them circling back and getting a quarterback in Kyle McCord later on day 2. But this certainly changes the math that you're going to do. At the top, Cam Ward's going number 1. Kellen Moore was at that pro day. We saw him there in Miami, but they're not going to have a chance at Cam Ward there. At number 9, though, this is where the conversation circles back to, because we've been talking about where will Shedeur Sanders go, Tommy, if he does not go 2 to the Browns or 3 to the Giants. The next natural landing spot, even when Derek Carr was healthy, was pick 9. And there was some conversation that maybe he slips past the Saints there because of Derek Carr at the time being 100% healthy and slipping to the Steelers. Now that changes, and this front office and new coaching staff in New Orleans has to figure out what they want to do, because as you know, you do have Jake Haener, who played a part of last season. You do have Spencer Rattler, who played part of last season as a rookie. Both guys struggled, and if they want to go in a different direction with a new head coach, you think at number 9, Shedeur Sanders might come back into the picture.
Okay, so they could go that route, especially if Shedeur Sanders happens to be there when they're still selecting in Green Bay. If we just take out that hypothetical part of it, just from a talent evaluation perspective, where did you have Spencer Rattler? Where do you still have Spencer Rattler? Because he's still, I know Jake Haener's a young quarterback, but Spencer Rattler, a very young quarterback in his own right.
Yeah, Spencer Rattler was one of my favorite players in last year's draft class. I had him graded as a 3rd-round pick, and we remember a year ago, 6 quarterbacks went in the top 12 picks, and then Spencer Rattler was the next one off the board in round 5. And he struggled last year. There's no two ways about it. I hesitated momentarily because the offensive line struggled. They had injuries at the skill position, but there are no excuses in the NFL, and Spencer Rattler probably would tell you that he needed to play better. So he could very well be in the mix. We'll have to see where the new head coach, Kellen Moore, is on these young quarterbacks not named Derek Carr, whether it's Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler. And if he feels okay with them going into the season or perhaps playing the entire season, they'll probably go in a different direction at number 9. Maybe they do, in fact, bolster that offensive line. But if there's any trepidation, any concern about the quarterback position without Derek Carr, again, you have to seriously consider taking a quarterback at 9. And also another consideration, maybe you trade back up in round 2, back into round 1 time, and you get a player like Jackson Dart if you happen to like him. But there are a lot of ifs in that sentence, and there could be other teams having that same line of thought. So if you have the 2 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, I think is how the saying goes, or 1 in the hand is worth 2 in the bush. So if you have Shedeur Sanders there at 9, you take him, and then you reevaluate the rest of your draft as you move forward.
Okay, this news certainly throws a wrinkle into things in terms of what the Saints potentially could do in, what, a week and a half's time?
The NFL draft is right around the corner, and our guy Ryan Wilson has done approximately, I don't know, 250,000 mocks up until this point. So we're trying to switch it up a little bit, right? Instead of a mock, we were looking at Ryan's top interior offensive linemen in the upcoming NFL draft. Topping the list out of Alabama is Tyler Booker. We have Gray Zabel, Donovan Jackson that are rounding out the top 3, and we're going to go through some of these guys with Ryan Wilson. The man himself, Ryan Wilson, joining us here on HQ. We're going to go through the top 5 on that list, Ryan. Break everything down. We are starting with number 5, which is Wyatt Milum, a guy who played tackle last season but projected to be a starting guard at the next level. How do you foresee that transition happening for him in the NFL?
Hey, Jacqueline, you know we're deep into the proceedings when we're talking interior offensive line. Only 13 days to go to the draft. So let's talk about the guys that don't get a lot of love. And you talked about Wyatt Milum out of West Virginia, who's played tackle either left or right the last 4 years for the Mountaineers. But he's probably going to kick inside in part because of the short arms that we like to talk about this time of year. His arms are less than 33 inches if you're keeping score at home. But he's a solid player, solid as they come, has a ton of experience, has gone up against some of the best pass rushers coming into the draft and guys that still remain in college. And you like everything you see about him in terms of the physical measurements there when you move him to guard. And then, of course, the way he played at West Virginia. And I had him going to the Kansas City Chiefs in round 2, my 3-round mock draft that came out last week. That feels like a good fit because they need to bolster that offensive line. And with Milum, you get a guy who can play guard on day 1 and who can give you a little swing tackle possibility on game day. So I like him to go in round 2, and he is my interior offensive lineman, number 5.
Yeah, the 2024 Big 12 Offensive Lineman of the Year. Now we got to get to number 4, Tate Ratledge, and it's a guy who has a superb mullet-mustache combo, Ryan. So does the play match the eliteness of the mullet mustache?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if kids even say this anymore, but it feels like a chef's kiss when you see that mugshot there. That is fantastic. That guy screams guard at the next level. And he reminds me a lot of Landon Dickerson coming out of Alabama. He's 6'6", so he's a huge presence in the middle of that defense. He only, quote-unquote, weighs 308. He plays much stronger than that at the point of the attack. He's so incredibly solid. He did battle injuries last year for Georgia, and they certainly missed him when he wasn't on the field. But he is good against both the run and the pass. And I had him going to the Seattle Seahawks in round 2 of that 3-round mock draft that I talked about. They need help on the interior. He feels like a day one guy that you can plug in right away and expect him to be a high-level player for the next 6, 7, 8 years.
So coming in at number 3, Donovan Jackson. I know we kind of talked about this with Milam as well, but this is a guy here who could be moved around on the O-line as well, Ryan.
Yeah, and he was forced into playing left tackle last year for Ohio State when Josh Simmons went down in that Oregon game. Josh Simmons, his teammate, the transfer from San Diego State, is going to be a first-round pick. Donovan Jackson has a realistic chance of being a first-round pick, too, primarily for what he did at left guard, but he played at an extremely high level at left tackle on a championship team. His first game at left tackle, by the way, as a starter, Jacqueline, was against some guy named Abdul Carter. And I talked to Donovan about it at the Combine. He goes, yeah, that didn't go as well as I thought, but after that, I thought it was pretty good, and he was exceptional at left tackle. So again, he gives you that versatility. If you see there, if you peep the arm length at 33.5 inches, that checks the box if you want him to play at tackle. But he's a day one guard. He is absolutely physical at the point of attack. He is great in pass protection. So again, he may slip out of the first round just because there may be a run on some defensive guys. But if you told me he went top 32, I would be all for that.
All right, we're down to the top 2, and coming in at number 2, you have Gray Zabel, and this is somebody who is coming from a smaller school. When it's all relative. We're talking about the Ohio States and the Alabamas in the UGAs, a smaller school compared to that. But how much did his showing at the Senior Bowl really boost his draft stock, Ryan?
Yeah, no, he's not a Power 4 guy. He's an FCS guy. Again, he's a Power 4 guy in the mustache game, Jacqueline. And again, we talked to him at the Combine, and he is all business. He is all about football. And you mentioned the Senior Bowl. He played left tackle for North Dakota State last year, and he stood out in that Colorado game that they almost won. But when he got to the Senior Bowl, he was dominant, and not at tackle, but they moved him to guard and center. He had looked like he'd been playing there the entirety of his life. And I love the idea of him going to the Detroit Lions here at pick 28. He feels like a Dan Campbell guy. He feels like a Brad Holmes/Chris Spielman guy. And again, a day one starter based on what he's capable of doing. If you need him at tackle, he can certainly do that. But day one on the interior based on how well he performed down in Mobile, Alabama.
So, Ryan, we want to bring in a side-by-side comp here with Cody Mock because I feel like he has a little bit of a ways to go, Gray that is, in terms of the hair. But, man, these NDSU guys, like, just an elite vibe coming out of there, Ryan.
Hey, Jacqueline, this is before and after the apocalypse. That's what the mugshots look like for those guys. And Cody Mock is awesome. Like, he is such a fun guy. We talked to him at the Combine a few years ago.